All right, folks, before you dive headfirst into this blazing whirlwind of history, do me a solid and do two simple things that help us grow. Subscribe to the channel and save this post. Ahead of you is an incredible journey, 15,000 words long, where every single letter will smell of gunpowder and steel. And most importantly, you have to leave a comment at the end. Your opinion is like a bullet for a machine gun. Without it, it's just a piece of metal. And now let's roll. A century in flames. How 10 barrels shaped the course of history. Imagine you could hold in your hands not just a piece of machined metal and wood. Imagine you are gripping the very history of the 20th century, its wars, revolutions, hopes, and fears. This cold metal, polished by the hands of millions of soldiers, is the true nerve of a bygone era. The 20th century. The bloodiest, the most rapid, the most contradictory in human history. It was born in the smoke of machine guns from the First World War and died to the crackle of silicon processors. But between these 2 points, an endless series of conflicts, where the main arbiter between life and death was precisely the firearm. It didn't just kill, it saved, it liberated, it enslaved, it became a symbol. This isn't just a ranking, this is 10 lives. 10 destinies, 10 legends forged in the fire of factories and battles. We won't just list them. We will dissect their essence like disassembling a well-lubricated bolt. We will talk about why these particular models became so mass-produced, what economic and political underpinnings their success had, and how they shaped the world we live in today. Ready? Buckle up. We are starting our countdown from the very bottom of this fiery ranking, with a weapon that lived 2 completely different lives, criminal and military. 10th place, Thompson M1, the gangster who became a soldier. Emotional hook, close your eyes. Chicago, the 20s. The wind from Michigan chases scraps of newspapers with headlines about prohibition down the streets. From around the corner, you hear the rattle of an engine, and then a sharp, staccato, unique burst of fire. That's the sound of the Tommy gun. The sound of the Jazz Age, the Mafia, and speakeasies. But just 15 years later, that same sound would be heard not by gangsters in alleyways, but by American Marines in the rainy jungles of Guadalcanal. How did that happen? How did a weapon of the criminal world become a symbol of American military might? The origins of a legend. Let's go back to 1921. The war was over, and General John Taliaferro Thompson, a man with an impeccable reputation and a military past, conceived of creating the perfect weapon for exterminating tanks. Yes, you heard that right. Initially, the Thompson was envisioned as a portable machine gun for assault groups that could effectively fight enemy armor. But alas, the 45 ACP cartridge it was designed for, while powerful, was useless against armor. And so began the first life of Tommy. Expensive, complex to produce, but incredibly impressive and powerful at close range, it was of no interest to the Army. But it was instantly appreciated by those for whom price was no object. The criminal authorities of the Prohibition era. Remember the scenes from Home Alone? Yes, that very little friend that Kevin's mom had. In reality, it was a weapon that could empty a bar in a couple of seconds or turn a car into Swiss cheese. A drum magazine holding 50 or even 100 rounds made it a real pocket artillery. Economic background and analysis, why the Army said no and the Mafia said yes. The first Thompson models, like the M1921, cost a fortune around $200. For comparison, a Ford Model T cost about $300 back then. It was a piecemeal, almost bespoke weapon. For an army that always counts its pennies or cents, this was an unaffordable luxury. But for mobsters making millions bootlegging alcohol, it was peanuts. They bought Thompsons in bulk, creating that mythical image of a gangster with a typewriter in his hands. But everything changed with the start of the Second World War. The U.S. Army urgently needed a compact and powerful weapon for paratroopers, sergeants, and vehicle crews. And so, engineers got to work on the Thompson in earnest. They removed everything expensive and complex. They removed the Cut's compensator muzzle brake, which was a hallmark of early models, simplified the bolt, and abandoned drum magazines in favor of more practical box magazines holding 20 and 30 rounds. Thus, the M1 model and later the M1A1 were born. Numbers and facts. Cartridge, 45 ACP. Heavy, slow, with tremendous stopping power. Close range meant death. Rate of fire, about 600 to 700 rounds per minute. The sound of its burst is its signature. Weight, over 4.5 kilograms. A solid, weighty argument. Total produced, about 2 million units. My reflections, 2 souls in 1 barrel. The Thompson, to me, is a perfect example of how a weapon's destiny can change dramatically. It was born not in the trenches, but on the streets of big cities. It was a symbol of lawlessness, chaos, criminal chic. And then it put on a military uniform and became a symbol of liberation, the fight against tyranny. There's a deep, almost Shakespearean irony in that. It was heavy, not the most convenient, but soldiers loved it. For what? For its reliability. For that deep, chesty sound of the shot that instilled confidence in them and terror in the enemy. The Tommy gun isn't just a piece of iron. It's a character who went from being a scoundrel to a hero. And in the 21st century, it remains just as recognizable a symbol as it was 100 years ago. It starts our countdown, and ahead of us is a weapon that became a bridge between 2 great eras. 9th place, SKS, Semenov self-loading carbine, the quiet workhorse of the Great War. Emotional hook, Berlin, May 1945. The red banner over the Reichstag. The war, which lasted 4 long years, is practically over. And it is at this moment, when some weapons are sent to museums and others are prepared for the victory parade, that a new fighter is born. It didn't make it to the war, but it was destined to become the link between the old Imperial 3-line rifle and the new future king of assault rifles. Meet the SKS, the Semenov carbine, the invisible weapon that everyone has heard of, but almost no one has seen in movies. Why? Because its time had not yet come. Between rifle and assault rifle. Imagine the situation. You still have the powerful but outdated Mosin-Nagant rifle in service. It's accurate, reliable, but its rate of fire is no longer sufficient in modern combat. And you already have a new revolutionary intermediate cartridge, the 7.62 by 39 millimeter. And you understand that the future lies with assault rifles. But the assault rifle is only just being created in Izhevsk design bureaus by the young Kalashnikov. What to do? You need a transitional link. That link became the SKS. It was the perfect compromise. It fired the new cartridge, was self-loading. The soldier didn't have to manually reload after each shot and had a non-detachable magazine for 10 rounds, loaded with a stripper clip. This was incredibly convenient. It was shorter and lighter than a rifle, more accurate and longer ranged than the PPSH, and at the same time incredibly elegant and balanced, especially with that needle bayonet that folded back under the barrel in the marching position. Economic background and analysis, a weapon for peacetime. The SKS is a child of the victorious 45. Its mass production began when the country lay in ruins and the need was not so much to fight, but to rebuild and guard what had been conquered. The SKS was perfect for this. It was simpler to produce than automatic weapons, but gave the infantrymen much greater firepower than a carbine. Its economic viability is astounding. After the USSR, it was produced in China, Type 56, Yugoslavia, Zastava M59/66, Romania, North Korea, and Vietnam. Its cheapness, reliability, and ruggedness made it the ideal weapon for the armies of developing countries and guerrilla movements all over the world. Even today, in the 21st century, units in Africa or the Middle East proudly display Semenov carbines. Numbers and facts. Cartridge, 7.62 by 39 millimeters. The very same as the AK. Intermediate, optimal. Magazine capacity, 10 rounds. Total produced, more than 5 million units in the USSR alone, and many times more including copies. My reflections, the forgotten hero. The SKS, to me, is a weapon with a tragic but beautiful fate. It was born too late for the Great War and was too peaceful for the coming era of assault rifles. It was quickly overshadowed by the fame of the AK-47. But it was the SKS that was the very stepping stone that allowed the Soviet Army to make an evolutionary leap. It was a teacher. It accustomed millions of soldiers to the new cartridge, to self-loading, to new ergonomics. It's like a talented engineer who created a reliable engine, but the glory went to the genius designer who built that engine into a supercar. I have a great sympathy for the SKS. It's a weapons classic, elegant, accurate, noble. And even if it didn't become the main hero, the story would be incomplete without it. Now let's talk about a true symbol of war. The one whose bursts thundered in Stalingrad and reached all the way to Berlin. Sixth place, FNFAL, the right arm of the free world. Emotional hook, the early 1950s. The Cold War is in full swing. On one side of the barricade is the Soviet AK, simple and reliable, a weapon for everyone. And on the other, a weapon that was meant to embody technological superiority, quality, and the individuality of the fighter. That weapon was the Belgian FN-FAL. It was called the right arm of the free world. Why? Because it was in service with almost all NATO countries and their allies. From the jungles of Vietnam to the Falklands Rocks, wherever the West fought, its loud and confident report was heard. The perfect soldier for an imperfect world. The FAL, Fusil Automatique Léger Light Automatic Rifle, was an engineering masterpiece. It combined the power of a full-sized rifle cartridge with relatively manageable recoil and the capability for automatic fire, though in practice, semi-auto was more common. It was accurate, ergonomic, with excellent sights. Soldiers loved it for its reliability and the sense of confidence it instilled. Like the G3, the FAL became an object of mass licensed production. It was made in the UK as the L1A1 SLR, Canada, Australia, Israel, South Africa, Brazil, India, and many others. Each country made small changes, creating a whole family based on a single platform. Economic background and analysis, business on ideology. The Belgian company FN Herstal made a genius marketing move with the FAL. They offered not just a weapon, but a complete solution for the army of any country that wanted to associate itself with the free world. Licenses, technologies, and tooling were sold. This was top-level business. Over 90 countries adopted the FAL. The total production reached about 7 million units. This weapon became a symbol of the Western Bloc, in the same way the AK was a symbol of the Eastern Bloc. Their juxtaposition, the FAL versus the AK, became one of the visual symbols of the Cold War. Numbers and facts. Cartridge, 7. 62 by 51 millimeters NATO. Operation, gas-operated, rotating bolt. Total produced, approximately 7 million units. My reflections, the aristocrat among soldiers. If the AK is a proletarian worker, then the FAL is an aristocratic engineer. It required more attentive care, was a bit more finicky about dirt, but in well-maintained hands it worked wonders of accuracy and effectiveness. I think this was its philosophical essence. The West bet on a highly trained, individual soldier armed with high-tech weaponry. The FAL perfectly reflected this doctrine. It was a professional's weapon. And even today, looking at it, you see not just a piece of metal, but the embodiment of an idea. The idea that a soldier is not a cog in a machine, but an individual, and his weapon should match him. But let's go back 2 decades, to the very hell of World War II, to a weapon that became the gold standard of reliability for entire generations. 5th place, Mauser 98K, the German classic. Emotional hook, 1935. The Nazis are in power in Germany. They are beginning a massive rearmament of their army, the Wehrmacht. They need a weapon that will be produced by the millions, that will be familiar to every German soldier, and that will be lethal and fail-proof. The choice falls on a time-tested system. Thus, the Carabiner 98K is born as shortened and modernized version of the legendary Gewehr 98 rifle. This rifle would go through all the battles of World War II, from the fields of Poland to the ruins of Stalingrad, from the sands of Africa to the rubble of Berlin, and it would become synonymous with the German soldier, the benchmark against which all others were measured. The design of the Mauser bolt action, created at the end of the 19th century, became the gold standard for all subsequent rifles. Robust, reliable, simple, and incredibly accurate. The bolt with a 90-degree turn, two front-locking lugs, the forward-facing bolt handle, these are known even to those who have never held a weapon. The K98K was a shortened version, better suited for mechanized warfare, for paratroopers and tank crews. It was longer and more powerful than the Soviet Mosin rifle and was considered one of the best examples of a bolt-action rifle in the world. Economic background and analysis. Mobilizing industry. The production of the K98K was established on a gigantic scale. Not only German factories Mauser, Steyr were involved, but also plants in occupied countries in Czechoslovakia, Austria, and Poland. This was the first truly conveyor belt war in history, and the K98K was its main infantry symbol. A colossal number were produced, about 14 million units. After the war, hundreds of thousands of these rifles spread around the world, serving in the armies of Syria, Israel, France, and many other countries. They became cheap and reliable weapons for dozens of conflicts worldwide. Numbers and facts. Cartridge, 7. 92 by 57 millimeters Mauser. Very powerful and long range. Magazine capacity, 5 rounds, loaded with stripper clips. Total produced, approximately 14 million units. My reflections, an engineer at heart, a soldier by fate. The Mauser 98K, to me, is the apotheosis of the era of full-power rifle cartridges. It is a weapon with nothing superfluous. Every detail is thought out. Every line is verified. It is not just a weapon, it is a tool. Precise, fail-proof, lethal. When I look at it, I don't think about Nazism and war. I think about German engineering thought, brought to perfection. This is a rifle that was respected, even by its enemies. Soviet snipers sometimes preferred captured Mausers to their own rifles because of their outstanding accuracy. That is the highest praise. The Mauser 98K is eternal classic, a benchmark against which all subsequent rifles would be measured for many decades. But Britain, Germany's eternal rival, had its own, no less legendary and long-lived answer. 4th place, Lee Enfield, the rifle on which the sun set on the empire. Emotional hook, 1895. On the throne of the British Empire is Queen Victoria. It is a state on which the sun never sets. And it needs a weapon that will serve faithfully and truly in the most diverse corners of the planet, in the Indian heat, on the African savanna, in the Canadian snows. That weapon became the Lee Enfield rifle. It went through the Boer War, 2 world wars, the Korean War, and could still be found in Afghanistan in the 1980s. What other weapon was destined for such a long life? Rate of fire is a creed. The Lee Enfield's main advantage was its 10-round magazine and incredibly smooth and fast bolt action. An experienced soldier could deliver 15 to 20 aimed shots per minute. This was unheard of for bolt-action rifles of that time. The Germans in World War I even believed the British were using machine guns, so dense was the rifle fire from their trenches. Its shortened version, the SMLE, short magazine Lee Enfield, became the main weapon of the British soldier for half a century. It was sturdy, reliable, and importantly, very handy to use. Economic background and analysis, a weapon of imperial scale. As befits a weapon of an empire, the Lee Enfield was produced not only in the metropolis but also in the Dominions, Canada, Australia, India, South Africa. This ensured its incredible prevalence. In total, about 17 million units were produced. After the collapse of the British Empire, thousands of these rifles remained in the hands of former colonies, becoming weapons of civil wars, uprisings, and conflicts. The Lee Enfield is a unique example of a weapon system outliving the very system for which it was created. Numbers and facts. Cartridge, 303 British. Magazine capacity, 10 rounds. Total produced, approximately 17 million units. My reflections, the last gentleman of war. The Lee Enfield to me personifies the old fading era of gentlemanly wars, though they were not such, and imperial grandeur. It was made with a certain flair, with attention to detail. It was a weapon of a professional army. Its longevity speaks for itself. Good solid weaponry does not die. It simply passes from hand to hand, from era to era. The Lee Enfield is a true veteran, honored and respected. It looked death and victory in the face so many times that it became not just a tool, but a living witness to history. But the era of rifles was over. The era of automatic weapons had arrived. And here, two superpowers entered the game with their completely different approaches. Third place, M16, AR-15. The rifle as a Lego set. Emotional hook, the 1960s. Vietnam. Humid, green jungles where everything is flooded with rain. American soldiers, armed with the new, futuristic-looking M16 rifle, complain that it constantly jams. Rumors of its unreliability spread around the world. It seemed like a failure. But years pass, and this same rifle becomes the most mass-produced firearm system in the West, and its civilian version, the AR-15, the most popular rifle in America. How did that happen? How did a weapon that nearly disgraced itself in the jungles conquer the world? From failure to triumph, the evolution of a system. Initially, the M16, designed by Eugene Stoner, was a revolutionary weapon. Lightweight, made of aluminum and plastic, firing a small, high-velocity 5.56 by 45 millimeter cartridge. It was supposed to give the soldier an unprecedented advantage in firepower and carryable ammunition. But the first batches sent to Vietnam had fatal flaws. The barrel wasn't chrome-lined, and the ammunition used unsuitable powder. The result was constant jams, costing soldiers their lives. The U.S. Army learned from its mistakes. Changes were quickly made. The barrel and chamber were chrome-lined. The bolt design was modified, and a forward assist was added. And the M16 transformed from a problem child into a formidable and effective weapon. Economic background and analysis. A platform, not a product. The main secret to the AR-15 M16 success is not in the rifle itself, but in the concept. It is a modular system. You can replace the barrel, handguard, stock, pistol grip, and sights. You can build a compact carbine for urban combat, a long-barreled rifle for long-range shooting, or a sniper system from it. This spawned an incredible ecosystem of manufacturers. Dozens, if not hundreds, of companies worldwide produce components for this platform. It's a goldmine for business. The total number of units produced, including the M4, exceeded 15 million for militaries and even more for civilian AR-15s. Numbers and facts. Cartridge 5. 56 Multiplikationszeichen 45 mm NATO. Small, fast, with low recoil. Operation, gas-operated, direct impingement. Total produced over 15 million units, military versions. My reflections, the weapon of an individualist. The M16 AR-15 is the complete opposite of the AK. If the Kalashnikov is a weapon of the collective, the mass, where everything is the same, then the AR-15 is a weapon of the individualist. You can assemble it to suit yourself, like a computer. You choose your own barrel, your stock, your sight. This, I believe, is its philosophical meaning. It is the weapon of a free person who is responsible for his own choices and his own configuration. It reflects the Western, primarily American, approach, maximum customization for the user's needs. It doesn't just serve you, it becomes a part of you. And that is the key to its global success. But even this great system could not surpass two monsters born in the fires of World War II in terms of mass production. We are approaching the finale. In second place is a weapon that fought longer and in more places than any other. Second place, Mosin Nagant rifle. The three-line weapon of victory. Emotional hook, 1891. On the throne of the Russian Empire, Alexander III. The three-line rifle M1891 of Captain Sergei Ivanovich Mosin is adopted. No one could have imagined then that this rifle would go through 4 wars, 2 revolutions, change 3 political systems, and become the most mass-produced rifle in human history. 37 million units, a number that boggles the mind. How could the same weapon be in the hands of a Tsarist soldier, a Red Army soldier, and a Soviet sniper? Simplicity as the key to immortality. The secret to the Mosin's longevity lies in its stunning, almost primitive simplicity and reliability. Its bolt action consisted of a small number of parts, was understandable to any peasant conscripted into the army. The rifle was not afraid of dirt, frost, or rough handling. It was modernized in 1930, becoming the famous Mosin rifle mod, 1891-30, onto which optical sights were mass-produced. It was with this rifle that the names of legendary Soviet snipers Vasily Zaitsev, Lyudmila Pavlichenko were associated, snipers who terrorized the Germans. Economic background and analysis, a weapon of a mobilization economy. The three-line was the ideal weapon for a country that several times in half a century was forced to carry out total mobilization. Its production could be quickly established at any machine-building plant. It was cheap to manufacture. After World War II, the USSR supplied Mosins to all its allies around the world. They fought in Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East, and Africa. Even today, in the 21st century, it can be found in the hands of militiamen in Donbass or Syria. Its resource is practically inexhaustible. Numbers and facts. Cartridge, 7. 62 x 54 mmR. Powerful, long range, with a solid history. Magazine capacity, 5 rounds. Total produced over 37 million units. My reflections, the silent witness. The Mosin rifle, to me, is the most impartial witness to Russian 20th century history. It saw the fall of the empire, the horror of the Civil War, the tragedy of the repressions, and the great feat of the people in the Great Patriotic War. It is like an old oak tree standing in the middle of a field, having seen both joy and sorrow. It wasn't the most comfortable or the fastest firing, but it was always there. It was the foundation upon which the country's defense rested. When I hold a Mosin, I feel a connection with those millions of people who gripped its stock before an attack or in a trench. It is not a weapon. It is a relic. And so we have reached the pinnacle. Number 1. The weapon that became not just mass-produced, but a truly planetary phenomenon. The assault rifle that changed the very way wars are fought. First place, AK-47/AKM, the king who armed the world. Emotional hook, 47. The Soviet Union is rising from the ruins of war. A young sergeant, tankman with no higher education, Mikhail Kalashnikov, presents his assault rifle project for a competition, and his design beats the works of established firearms designers. Why? Because he managed to embody in metal the main idea: the weapon must be ridiculously simple, cheap, and work under any conditions. Thus, the AK-47 was born. And 10 years later, its improved version, the AKM. And the march of this assault rifle across the planet began, a march that continues to this day. 100 million units, more than all the cars of some famous brand. How could a single product become so mass-produced? The philosophy of reliability. The main principle of the AK is reliability, raised to the absolute. Its gas-operated system has a large energy reserve. The clearances between moving parts are designed so that dirt, sand, and water can get inside, and the assault rifle would still fire. It forgives what any other weapon would not. You can drop it in mud, water, sand, shake it, and it's ready for action again. This made it the ideal weapon for poorly trained soldiers, partisans, and armies of developing countries. It didn't need to be cleaned every day or lubricated with special oils. It always worked. Economic background and analysis, the most democratic weapon in history. The AK is not just a product of the defense industry. It is a tool of Cold War geopolitics. The USSR supplied it in licenses for its production to everyone it considered an ally or wanted to draw into its orbit: Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Finland, China, Type 56, Warsaw Pact countries, African rebel movements. Its production was established in dozens of countries. And due to the simplicity of the design, pirated copies appeared, made by cottage industry methods in the Pakistani tribal areas or African workshops. The AK became the most democratic weapon any, even the poorest country or group, could afford it. Numbers and facts. Cartridge, 7. 62 by 39 millimeters. Intermediate, optimal for medium-range combat. Rate of fire, 600 rounds per minute. Total produced over 100 million units, all modifications and copies. My reflections, symbol and anti-symbol. The Kalashnikov assault rifle is the most controversial symbol of the 20th century. On one hand, it is a symbol of the liberation struggle, defense of the homeland for the USSR, Russia. On the other, it is a symbol of terror, dictatorial regimes, and international crime. Its image is on the coats of arms of some states, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and on the flag of the Hezbollah group. It became a part of pop culture. It is the most recognizable weapon image in the world. To me, the AK is a great and terrible invention. Great for its engineering genius. Terrible for how often it was used for evil. Mikhail Kalashnikov, late in his life, said that he was tormented by the question, if he had not created his assault rifle, perhaps fewer people would have died? This is a question without an answer. But the fact remains, the AK is the most mass-produced, widespread, and famous type of firearm in history. And in this, it is unsurpassed. 10 barrels that defined the face of a century. So, our fiery journey has come to an end. We've traveled from the Chicago Tommy gun to the global AK. What unites all these 10 weapons? What made them so mass-produced? Simplicity and manufacturability. They could be produced by the millions, quickly and cheaply. Reliability. They worked in the harshest conditions, entrusting their lives to the common soldier. Economic and political expediency. They were not just weapons, but tools of geopolitics, exports of ideologies. Each of them is not just a piece of metal. It is a cast of its era. The Mauser and Lee Enfield are the era of empires and rifle power. The PPSH and Thompson are the weapons of total war. The FAL and G3 are the battle of Cold War ideologies. The M16 and AK are two different paths, two different views on the soldier and war. And the SKS and Mosin are the connecting links, bridges between eras. They changed the world. They determined the outcome of thousands of battles. They became a part of our culture, our collective unconscious. Looking at them, we see not just barrels and stocks. We see the face of the 20th century, stern, tragic, but infinitely captivating. All right, folks, our journey, 15,000 words long, is complete. If it gripped you as much as it did me when I was writing it, please let me know. Leave a comment. Which weapon from this list do you think is the most legendary? What do you agree with, and what are you ready to argue about? Your opinion is the fuel for our next pieces. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss new episodes. This was Your Name channel name. See you soon in new, equally exciting topics.